So is this where you do the three, two, one, you got it, Ray, or am I good to go here?
And action.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here at JLC. This is a JLC media program. We do one webinar a month and we attempt to create the webinar around what's in the field. And I will tell you that we lean on different magazines, articles, etc. And the one we're leaning on today is what I think was a really useful read for me. I have a leadership role with some people I am incredibly fond of, and some of them are on the television screen. And if you're listening to us on podcast, it will be on the podcast with us. And it seems to me that we have been in a constant stage of reinventing ourselves ever since COVID happened. We had a company that was supposed to go outbound and go see all these people and spend time at different activities and different schools, different company headquarters, and it all ended. And there was a need for us to think about how do we reinvent ourselves so that we can move forward. The client base that we serve is constantly talking to us about what do we need? Do we need to reinvent? And will we reinvent? And what will that be like? And I must tell you that sometimes reinvention becomes necessary because somebody passes a law. If you work with me and some of my federal clients that are working in the Pentagon and working in military medicine, sometimes there's a law that's been passed. Change is necessary. Do I have the leadership team in place that will provide, given their personal practical knowledge from the past, will that give us what we need so that we can move forward into this very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world? So here we are together to talk about this. So we stole an article from HBR. I guess we didn't really steal it. It's available to everyone. And we read it. And we all said this is a very more than palatable, a potent article for everybody in leadership right now. To expand the context slightly, the team that I have the pleasure of being involved with has only a few members on it. We are small. And I know many people out there right now lead small teams, and they are the owner of the small team business that they're involved in. So this work will probably have real appeal for anybody, whether you are a small business owner or you're a C suite level person in an organization. In fact, the beginning of the literature that came out of this was all from C suite people. So the article is in HBR, this January, February HBR magazine that comes out, written by three people, Paul Leinwand, Mediva, Matt Manning, I think he goes by Matt, and Blair Shepard. And it's really a wonderful little piece, and if you get a chance to read it, you'll see all the literature involved. So, as we give good credit to them, I also want to talk a little bit about the fact that they went to 12 global firms to pull this literature together. And they looked through each of them deeply when they pulled the literature out. And there are really just four things for us to talk about today. And we're going to talk about them in just a few minutes. But I want you to kind of sit in learning as we go through this. So, with that in mind, we're going to do what we call a check in. So, Colleen, what are you going to do to stay in learning for our conversation today? And what did you hear me say?
To stay in learning, I am going just to stay in a space of listening. I think sometimes I get distracted. I think that happens to all of us. So I'm really going to make sure that I'm focusing on listening. And I think the one thing that really resonated with me and what I'm hearing is that there are going to be four things that we are going to discuss that were in the article, and that really these can be applied whether you're at the C-suite, whether you are a small owner of a business, or wherever you are in your personal leadership journey, is because many of us are leading teams. So what I heard was that these four things, whatever they happen to be, that we're going to discuss, can be applied no matter what type or level of leader you happen to be.
That's beautiful, Colleen. And as you know, this team knows, and I'm sure you folks know, the first person we lead is ourselves. What do I need to do differently to I become more effective as a team member, as a leader, whatever I need to do? this is my responsibility to improve my personal practical knowledge so I get better. Julie, what are you thinking, and what are you putting aside to be with us today besides haircuts? What are you putting aside?
I don't know that I'm putting anything aside other than the way I'm going to stay in learning is I will type notes in the chat box for everyone if you ask a question, and I invite everybody else. If you have questions or thoughts or stories, please feel free to add them in the chat. And I'm just excited to talk about how to reinvent ourselves. Sometimes we get stuck or we don't even know where to begin. So I think that'll really open things up.
I love
I don't
that.
know.
I love that. Thank you for getting in with that. There's a piece here too. Reinvention happens after you reimagine. So, and you know, I'm not a big fan of re's of a sort, but I think we can imagine a different future and then a different team that can actually meet the needs of the customers and their customers going forward. So I think there's something really strong in what you gave us, Julie. Thank you. Nicole, what are you thinking about and how are you going to stay with us here?
Yes, so I definitely was feeling a little distracted. And one of the things that I'm going to do is set aside those distractions for me so that I can be fully present and engage and listen and hear the wonderful things that each of you has to say. So that is definitely coming up for me. And I'm excited to get into this conversation about imagining. And I think we don't often let ourselves or give ourselves the space to do that as leaders. We have some mission and we're focused on it and we just need to get it done. And where is the time and space for us to think about, is this the right thing? Is this the right team? Is this the right structure for this team? So I'm excited to get into that conversation. I'm in.
So thank you. So you just brought up an interesting part of this article and that I found fascinating was the combination of roles where we used to say, well, that person's a visionary, but that one's an executor. And this particular article kind of mushes that stuff together and say we need both. We need people that can do both as they go forward. Need to have a vision and be visionary, but also need to understand what it takes to execute. There are a couple of other aspects like that. I think the piece that really struck me the most with these four ideas make sense to me as I think about developing my own self and my own personal practical knowledge as an associate at JLC, but also as someone who is truly working to take care of those in my care. So that's leadership for me, is to take care of those in your care. So here we go. I'm going to identify the four. I'll just kind of say them in Ray speak. And then I'm going to have each of us take each of the points and have us have a fast conversation about it. First one, think about your leadership team right now. Think about the roles that they play and the responsibilities that they have. Now, I am absolutely sure that I've just worked last week with two different groups where there's been a shift in expectation. So the roles and responsibilities are in the air. We are now talking about what are the necessary roles and responsibilities to move this team forward, to take care of the big, big purpose that they're trying to take care of. So roles and responsibilities is the first one. The second one, how do you get a group of people to really work well together? And are the people that we have right now on my leadership team or the team that I am leading, right? Do they need development so that they can become a good match for the roles and responsibilities that we need? So first, roles and responsibilities, those that are on my team, are we going to be able to kind of hang on to them, or they need to develop some more PPK, personal practical knowledge, so they can stay on the team? Or is, old Joe just really not kicking it anymore? And what do we need to do with him? How do we move him to another space? The third one is really about, if we focus on transformation and enabling transformation, I want you to remember this little systems truism. Whatever enables, disables. So I have this particular set of people enabling the transformation to this new space, right? What's being disabled? Because we're letting something go. And then the last one, This one for me, and it brought up all these stories, mostly stories where I failed to do this very well. Take ownership of the behavior of the team that I am leading. There are times in my life where I just did not do that. I kind of figured they would sort itself out. They'd be okay. They can figure this out. And that never did quite work. So as I grew in formal leadership positions, I learned that that was something I needed to take care of. And this article reminded me of that. And being who I am, many of you that do know me, I'm going to always go to a where did I screw that up? And I can identify those places pretty easily. So those are the areas: roles and responsibilities. Do we have the right people on the leadership team? And if not, do they need more new PPK to get better at this? Focus on the transformation, find out what's going to make it happen. And the last one, really big one, make sure the team is working well together. So I'm going to open it up to you guys. Which of those four resonated with you the most? Because I'll review them again at the end. But right now, I'd like to know from your practice, because you're all in practice, supporting being leaders and supporting people in leadership. Which one resonated most with you and why?
I'll go ahead and just chime in. I think when you were going through those, what really surfaced with me was the roles and responsibilities. It's, everyone is shifting and their role is shifting and changing. And yet, many times when I'm coaching a client, I'll ask them, right, when was the last time that they had a conversation with their team about roles and responsibilities? Because if I have shifted
Right,
and
right.
our processes or what we're doing, what we're designing has changed, but we just continue to roll along without pausing to say, okay, well, wait a minute, what are our roles and responsibilities? And it's just actually pausing to reflect, to have that conversation with the team, because I can't stay in my lane or get my things done well if I don't even know what everybody's expecting me to do, and I'm not even quite sure what my new role looks like.
So that is so interesting to me because people we all make this up as we're going along. That's just the God's truth. Everybody wants to act like I got this big, yeah, right, we do, until the day unfolds. And then I got 5 phone calls, 30 emails, things I need to take care of. So I get drifted back into my current reality work. I always call that as being pulled back into my trance to get, instead of really working on what is the transformation, what does it look like, what are the roles and responsibilities that we need. And I get anxious if I don't know how to do something. I think I got to quickly go to a new space, right? Well, that means I have learning to do, and I need to stay in learning as that process unfolds. Colleen, that was magnificent. Julie, Nicole, what are you guys thinking?
I'll go with number three. Several people said that number three got their attention. If we focus on transformation, what are the factors that disable the transformation or enable the transformation? So I'm thinking recently I was at a school district. I do a lot of change with the Navy, and just recently this leader thought that everyone was on board, and they were really excited for the day. And so that's what I started out with. I said, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much are you on board with this transformation, with this change? And he was shocked to find out that the majority of the people were not on board for various reasons.
Mm.
And he realized he needed to have to do a lot of work and create a common understanding of this vision, right? What could the transformation look like? And then what are the supporting roles or the supporting factors that are already in place that will continue to enhance? And then what are some things that maybe he wasn't even aware of that he needed to think about that might limit the transformation? So it's really, number three is really about conversations, not just simply, okay, here's the change, this is your new date, blah, blah, blah. But before that even happens, to have that conversation with all those that are going to be involved in the transformation.
Okay, Julie, that's just brilliant. And that sensibility about how many of you are on board with the change? Well, not me. No, maybe, and not too many. If we don't build that feedback loop, we don't know. It's almost like I have no awareness of what's really going on. So I will try to meet my understanding or my personal perspective of what the needs are, but I could be way off. If I don't take the time to build a feedback loop, I'm stuck. The other piece on driving transformation, this is just the experience of Ray Jorgensen, no one else, just me living in the world. Whenever change unfolds, I get called in often. Whenever get change, there's a big change happening. Ray, come be with us. And they're like, well, don't you have some magic? I said, no, the magic is already here. Because I say to people, what's the biggest change that has ever happened for you? And they'll identify it. Joining the military, leaving the military, getting married, having a child, on and on. They'll all tell me something that is like, wow, that was a big change for me. Tell me what characteristics you had to develop, what capabilities you had to develop in order to successfully get through that change. So I'm going to assume you didn't leave home or get divorced. You stayed there and tried to be a parent and be a good partner. So that sensibility of recognizing change has already occurred in my life, and some big ones have occurred. Big ones. What did I need to develop in myself so I could move through that change? Well, I'm trying to drive a transformation, and there are things that can enable that. What can enable it? The practical knowledge that the people already have about how to deal with change. So I don't need to go out and find some guru to come in and talk to me about change. So I'm pretty much talk my way out of a job all the time. You don't need me. People know how to change. They've already been in big significant changes. Let's talk to your team and find out, here is the change. Here is a transformation that's taking place for us right now, and how we connect with our customers, how we bring our product to them. Whatever the big transformation is, it's unfolding. There's already some wisdom in there. There's already great wisdom in your team. How do we tap into it to move forward? Thank you, Julie. Nicole, where are you on these?
Yeah, I'm seeing several comments about number 4 when we talk about taking ownership of the leadership team's behavior.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking about what that looks like in practice. I think one of the comments that stuck out to me from earlier in the thread in the chat was the way that this resonated. You said the first person I lead is myself. And the comment is, that's such a powerful way to say that. It makes me think, what happens to execution when a person isn't effectively leading self? And I think we see that show up in a lot of leadership teams. And Ray, you always say something to the effect of, think about your standard for leadership. Look at your lowest performer on the team, or the person who's not, that's your standard. And I've had some recent conversations with some leaders where we brought that up, and their minds were like, what do you mean that's not my standard? Well, to everyone else, that is the standard. They're trucking along, performing at this level, having these kind of conversations, disrupting the team in these kinds of ways. And whether you're handling that in the background or not, nothing is seen to the rest of the team. So your standard is here. So what does it really look like in practice to take a different approach, to create a different standard, and then model that and elevate the rest of the team to where they need to be?
And that's magnificent. So that particular piece, and those of you that are listening, I urge you to think about that. Whoever is performing in a way, behaving in a way that's unacceptable to you, and we don't do anything about it, that is your standard. That's what's acceptable. And unfortunately, the rest of the team will lean towards that particular standard, because you have standards. You really do. Sometimes we don't ever write them down. We don't put them in our journal, but we behave towards certain standards. If we don't take the time to recognize that particular person is behaving like a bad actor, I need to have a conversation. And we have lots of information on how to have that difficult conversation, which most of us don't want to have. I don't want to go to work and feel bad because I got to talk to Nicole because she's doing something that it's. And the truth is, there are many ways to have that conversation where you don't have to feel bad and Nicole doesn't have to feel bad. So this ability to recognize there are certain standards of behavior that are acceptable on the team. They're absolutely acceptable. And if we're not careful, they become the standard. And Nicole made a beautiful side comment. I'm going to kind of accentuate it a little bit. So if somebody does behave in a way, if Julie acts in a way I'm not happy about, and I go and chat with her about it, we have the difficult conversation, okay? We can't keep it quiet. She will tell everyone, Ray, call me and talk to me about whatever. So all of a sudden, the room, the house, the community, the school, Wherever you are, everybody knows it. It's not really a secret any longer. And I don't necessarily have to fix Julie's behaviors. I simply need to state to her, and then by doing so to all, that's not acceptable. Okay? Love you a lot. That's not acceptable. So it isn't about not creating unconditional care and love for a human being. It's about recognizing what the impact of their behavior is. Those of you that want to know more about this, please check out another podcast that we did. I think I made poor Julie be the recipient of the conversation where I had her talk about with me after we did a setup. You'll see the whole setup, see the whole thing actually. But here's the situation, Julie. Here's the behavior I have observed by you. Let's talk about those two things first, situation and the behavior I observed. And we talk about that until there is a common understanding. Yeah, I guess I can see how I did that. Then the last thing is, what is the impact of your behavior on the team? So this ability to have a way to do this, and believe it or not, there are really solid, good ways to have these difficult conversations. That you can take ownership of the team's behavior by establishing, hey, these are the standards that we really want to work toward. Sometimes we don't do that, or we forget that somebody joined the team 6 months ago, didn't hear the opening onboarding wonderful speech that we gave, so they don't know. So this opportunity for us to keep this alive is really, really important. So we did 3 a little bit, did 4 a little bit. Let's do number 1 again. So I want you to think for a moment about the current team that you're leading. What
Ray,
is, yeah, I'm so sorry.
before we move forward, we do have a question.
Okay,
I
question.
just want to get us down another conversation. The question is from Dan. Thanks so much, Dan, for the question. I remember being willing to take responsibility for the team when they or we screwed things up, but I was uncomfortable with ownership when the team succeeded. How do really effective leaders take responsibility when the team wins?
Yeah. So I would say that, so this will, I'll go into Brene Brown and Simon Sinek's research. So, and Simon's all about the SEAL team. And what he talks about on this, in studying working with the SEALs and studying what they were doing, if they have high trust and high capability and dependability to accomplish things, the person that gets the accolade, the persons that get the accolade are the team members, and the leader needs to step back and let the team get it. That's true from both places, by the way. When things don't go well, the person that needs to be up front and facing forward and being the first one to take responsibility, that's the leader. So both Brene and Simon, same kind of game. Support the team, celebrate team wins, team victories. If you have a small team, try every week to find some small win you can celebrate. Celebrate team wins. Then goes wrong. You have to be the first one out there to say, I got it. I am responsible for this. And they're going to say, well, your team member. No, got it. Thank you for your comment about my team member. I will accept responsibility for this and then move forward. So 2 people I really like a lot have said that. The other one is Ed Shine, who had a wonderful book on humble leadership. And when he describes this, he says that humility is everything in an effective leader. And when I was working at the Pentagon, this was one of the books that General Mattis really loved, Humble Leadership. And how do we actually show up and say, great credit goes to the team, any responsibility for failure comes to me. It was just magnificent the way he kind of laid that out. Ed laid that out. And people that I work with in the Navy, in the Air Force, in the Army, Health Administration, DHA, and certainly other places in the Pentagon, they heard that loud and clear. Now, if I'm in trouble and I'm going to lose my job, I might do something different in that moment because my other needs may overwhelm me. But the real work here is that when the team wins, celebrate the team. The team that doesn't win, take responsibility and then work with the team on how we do the next thing better. How was that, Nicole? Did I get at it? Thank you.
Yeah, I think you got it. Dan's comment, oh, good, I didn't screw that up. I felt like stepping back to let them celebrate was the right thing. And thanks.
Yeah. I don't think that we celebrate well enough, often enough. And one of the things that I thought was really an interesting transposition from my school life into the world of coaching in the business world, and also creating my own business and being a C-suite person in two businesses. And in one business, I was their chief learning officer. And what I transferred to the gang was one of our responsibilities each week is to find one specific thing that a team member has done well, and your job is to let them know. Your job is to let them know. And every week, as part of our closeout session, the meeting of the week, I would say, make sure that you got to somebody who you noticed do something really powerful. Believe it or not, goes all the way back to elementary school. That's where I first saw somebody do it. And then moving forward, when I was coaching high school athletes and college athletes, we all had opportunity to talk about the contribution that another team member made. There's something powerful in that whole piece of identifying that contribution that another human being made. Thank you for that. Julie, what's some other questions that are poking in or comments that you're noticing?
The one that we didn't talk about is number 2. How do we get a group of people to work together? Do they need to develop? What do they need to develop for collaboration?
Yeah. So let me kind of stay there for a minute. There was a lot of work done in the 90s and early 2000s about getting the right people on the bus and all that. You know, it's a great piece. I love Jim Collins a lot. And I think he helped me think about how do I do that effectively. So if I have a diverse group of people who are not collaborating, that's work for the leader. The leader can actually demonstrate how we can collaborate well. In fact, any of you that have taken any of our conversational leadership classes or seen us do the work, what we do is we show you how to behave so you demonstrate the following: mutual investment in one another's success. Just by listening to Julie and listening to you guys that are asking us questions, we are actually invested in your success. You took time to be with us. We want to make sure this is good. So that's why we keep stopping and saying, what's a question or a provocation that's out there? So as we think that I want a diverse group of people. I really want people from very different backgrounds who see the world differently. I don't want everybody going, yes, Ray, good, Ray, right, Ray. That's a lose-lose situation for me. So I really need people that will challenge the thinking, challenge the ideas that are out there. But at the same time, and if you've taken you use our practices, at the same time I challenge someone, I suspend my certainty. Because I know my challenge is my own. I made it up through my own attitudes, beliefs, biases, and assumptions. I came up to this conclusion, so I'm challenging you with my conclusion. And at the same time, I need to suspend my certainty, so that as I suspend my certainty, I can learn. By the way, that is a mutual learning. So on a team, if you lead any team, small or large, or a big business or a tiny business like I get the privilege of leading, my job is to make sure that I will not try to be sure. Because if I try and be too sure, I stop learning. In fact, I've said this to my team, and I don't mean this in any pejorative way. Sometimes I create a learning disability in myself because I can't hear other perspectives. Therefore, if I can't learn because I'm so sure that I'm right, I'm in trouble. So the way that team gets stronger is by practicing very disciplined conversational techniques so they get more and more effective at listening to one another and coming up with the best possible solution moving forward. Number 2, in my mind, is all about coming up with the best possible conclusion, decision moving forward. Even if it's about the current reality that we are still playing in, we need to make the best possible decision so that we have time to really think about what do we need to reimagine for this new space that we're going into right now, or for the shift in the customer, a shift in the client base, a shift in the demographics, or a shift. Look at us here. Here we are sitting on, Hollywood Squares, having a chat with you if you're watching us on YouTube, or we're on a podcast. Like I'm trying to work out. What did Ray say? You know what? And so this is just a very different way for us to be together, but one the 4 of us have worked on dramatically. By the way, they have certainly challenged me on my own mental models on how to get better at doing this. So making sure that we see those roles and responsibilities and how to help the team learn to collaborate more and more effectively is an ongoing, wonderful journey. It's all about the journey. And JLC is all about the practices to help you get to your outcomes and end state. That's a beautiful question. Thank you. Colleen, what are you thinking and learning?
I'm just going back to some of the things that my colleagues have offered, right? And even what Julie said, what does it look like? How can I, as a leader, really develop this environment and space of collaboration? And Julie did a great example. She said, hey, she worked with the leader to have these open questions and provocations to get people to reflect and to create space for everyone's voice to be heard. Great example. Another practical example of creating that space, Ray, you mentioned in a check-in, right? In just inquiring to everyone, kind of what are they working on? Or the other one that really resonated with me is, think of one thing that you've noticed one of your colleagues do exceedingly well this week. That in and of itself shifts the space where everyone is working together and really enhances those professional relationships amongst the team.
That is a demonstration of mutual investment too. I really love that, Colleen, and that you hit on the fact that what Julie laid on the table is a very simple way to get feedback from the team. As you get more and more capable, you develop your own personal practical knowledge as a leader to listen to the feedback. Quote, people say, you want some feedback? And I go, no, thank you. Not today, right? I don't feel that well yet anyway. So wait till I'm drunk or wait until I'm happier. Then you can give me some feedback. Rather than feedback is a natural, ongoing part of being a leader. And if I don't have good feedback loops, ways to find out, I'm in trouble. I watched one of my colleagues that was a leader of a small team, had 5 people on his team, small business. They sold insurance. They did a great job. And Friday was 2 things. It was feedback and fun day. So the feedback was, what did we do this week that really went well, and what should we do differently next week? Okay. The fun was, what's something we can tell one of our teammates that they did that was magnificent? Feedback and fun. I thought it was incredibly wonderful. And they got so used to that. They were looking forward to Friday. They were actually making notes. Sometimes the meeting went longer than it was supposed to because they were too busy telling one another what they did really well. Ladies and gentlemen, in the world of conversational leadership, which is one of the aspects of a learning organization, what you focus on grows. What you focus on grows. So getting real clear on what are the behaviors, the collaborative behaviors that really I want to focus on and grow. My God, there's such. Now, if I show up and say, let me tell you about all the things you're doing wrong, okay, which some people do, and they think it's well intentioned. It's not like I'm trying to do something wrong or hurt somebody. What you focus on grows. And it's an unintended consequence of focusing on things that you're not happy with on the team. So this little sense of focus is really a big deal, really a big deal. You guys have been great. Thank you so much. And if there's any more questions, we'll grab them. Julie, back to you. You got one that's popping in?
I don't have a question, but I do have something to add to what Colleen was
Please.
talking about. I was at a school district recently, and there's on the administrative team, you have about, I don't know, 10 to 15 different administrators, all different levels, all different leadership styles. And your job as the assistant super or superintendent is to get everyone, to go the same way and support each other. And that doesn't always happen, right? Elementary is against the high school is against the middle school, and that sort
Don't
of
tell
thing.
our secrets to everybody. Yes.
So one of the things that we did recently that really helped the team come together was to advertise what our strengths were and what our weaknesses were, and just be upfront with it, and then share what we could possibly need from each other. So for example, there's 2 or 3 principals that are really, really great at tearing things apart. And they just always, every time someone goes to present, they're like, this, that. And then there's other principals that are just like, oh, this is a great idea. Like, let's do it. They're right on board right away. So how can you bring both of those teams together, and begin to collaborate? Adam Grant, who wrote Think Again, he talks about creating a challenge network. And that way it creates space for those principals that naturally cut things down in the planning stage, not in the presenting stage, but in the planning stage. You go to that person, you say, hey, I know you normally cut things down. I need you to cut this down for me. And on the other end, those people who tend to cut things down all the time, they can't get started, at least in my aspect, because all they keep seeing are all these things that could go wrong. So I say, go to the person that's always on board and meet with them and start that motivation and start that, get the ball rolling, find out some good things that are here, and then you can go from there. So that's sort of what we did. It was like, let's not hide the fact that these people are always against things and these people are always on board, but let's bring them together and strengthen the team together.
I love it. And they're always on board until they get out in the parking lot or offline. And then they're not so much on board anymore. So this brings up something that we've worked on, Julie and I have worked on. Adult learners have a tendency to slip into three categories: oppositional learner, a congruent learner, they agree with everything, and dynamic. It depends on who's talking and it depends on the subject. And it depends on how much they think they know about something. See what I mean? So kind of an interesting edge. I don't think people are aware of that. If you simply talk about the three kinds of learners that live on any team, in any presentation, in any planning session, their awareness of how they are behaving sometimes helps them. By the way, because they're an oppositional learner doesn't mean they're against the idea. It's how they learn. They take a position, oh, that won't work. Oh, let me tell you why. So what they're really doing is telling themselves why it won't work. If that human being recognizes that is a way of learning, it is a particular style of learning, believe it or not. It absolutely is deeply embedded in the literature that there are oppositional learners. First time they hear something, they go, no. Then there are congruent learners. First time they hear something, they go, yay, yay, we should do that, whether they've really thought about it or not. And then the other kind, which is a mixture of both, and it depends on the subject, the topic, or the presenter. I always think the presenter part's really fascinating to me. Thank you, Julie. That was magnificent. Over to you, Nicole.
Yeah, I really keep thinking about, I'm working with a team right now, and one of the challenges is there's not the mutual investment in each other's success yet.
Yes.
So there's a rub there. So people do not feel safe to come and challenge or give feedback because they're worried about reactions from others on the team.
Incredible.
So I'm super curious about some thoughts from the audience and thoughts from the group about what it takes to get to that sense of safe space, and how do you really get people to show up as mutually invested in each other's success? Because I think that's a big challenge here when we talk about transformation. Who is willing to challenge the status quo? Who's willing to think differently about who's on this team or the work that we do? Because a lot of people and organizations, some of which I'm working with right now, are really holding on tight because they're afraid. There's fear there that there won't be a space for me, that I will lose my job or role or the work that I'm actually good at doing. So I'm super curious to hear some thoughts and reactions to that.
Colleen, Julie.
So I could just speak from my experience, and then Nicole, as you see some things coming in, the JLC team has always been very clear that the expectation is that you support everyone on the team, and regardless of who's leading the project, you get together and you plan together, and everyone's always stepping up and saying, hey, if you need help, let's set up a time. And so when you talk about that safe space and being mutually invested, if you are not the one who's saying, hey, how can I help you? And instead you're complaining because no one's helping me, right, there's a start of it, right? So how can you start to mutually invest in other people's success, even if it's a 5-minute discussion, even if it's a, hey, send me your PowerPoint or your brief so that I can look through for typing errors or something. You are the one, an individual needs to be the one to go and share and be willing to support. And I think that's how it creates safe space.
That's beautiful. Thank you. What are you hearing, Colleen? What are you thinking?
You ask and advertise, you let people know, hey, this is something that's really important to us as a team. So you set that expectation as the leader, but oh my gosh, espouse theory and practice, and we talk a lot about this, it is critically important that you model it. And I think that's the piece, Julie, that really resonated with me about what you offered is, if it is important to me as a leader for us to speak with one voice, for us to ensure we are creating a space where we can see things differently, then I'm going to be pausing, just like Ray's been doing, closing the loop. Does anyone see that differently? Does anyone have another thought? I'm going to constantly be doing those things throughout our team conversations so we can initiate and grow safe space. Otherwise, I'm going to say, hey, I really value your perspective, Nicole, but then I'm just going to keep on talking because I like my perspective and it's really comfortable for me. So I think what's really important, once again, is if you're saying that creating safe space is important, having a space of true collaboration, then you better be stating that out loud, setting the expectation for the team, and then once again, modeling it along the way.
Nicole, what are you thinking and hearing and learning?
Yeah, I love that. I think so much of it does come back to what we model. And I love the idea of just putting it out there like, hey, look, I'm going to be working towards creating a different kind of space, creating a space where we can challenge each other's thinking. And here's how I'm going to start. And really looking to have the kind of conversations that invites different perspectives, different voices, different ways of seeing something, and still coming back to how much that is contributing to the success that we can achieve together as a team.
Yeah, what I'm finding interesting to me, based on those sentences, Nicole, is how the last few weeks I have been just uh, immersed in learning about psychological safety. It's big for me because the three of you know this, and some of the audience members know this, that I lost a friend in the Challenger disaster. And when all the dust settled, it was pretty obvious that people knew things were potentially and we had a problem, and they were unable to say it. The discovery, believe it or not, is one that Amy Edmondson brought up from Harvard in her little talk on YouTube. And there was a gentleman who saw something strange when the final separation took place on the launch. He brought it to his boss. He brought it to somebody anyway, or not exactly who he brought it to, but they said, "Look, we don't need Chicken Littles here." And when they did a gathering to say, "Are we good to go for reentry?" and he didn't say anything, and somebody asked him, "Why didn't you say anything?" and he said, "I just couldn't. I just could not say what was on my heart." So those of you that are out there and listening to this work, the practices themselves that the four of us use daily on one another, with one another, in all of the efforts that we use, are designed to create true psychological safety. So we're risk averse because the amygdala will kick in, run, don't run, fight. The amygdala is always in front of us. It's always there looking, is this a problem? Is this something I should avoid? At the same time, the more you practice the disciplines that we have shared with many of you, the more the space can start to shift and shift and shift until I can say what's really on my heart. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've come almost to the end. And Nicole, you have a question or two for us to
Yeah,
close out our
just
piece?
wanted to take note of some of the really wonderful comments coming through. One from Doug says, I always found the technique that Ray taught us was putting people in groups of 3 or 4 and having them hash out their concerns, worries, questions. It's safer in that smaller group, isn't it? Then bringing them back together to the larger group to share. It gave a chance to address those head on and discuss as a larger group. So I really
Yeah,
loved that.
I wanted to remind myself of that too. Thank you, Doug. Sure. See, if I can put a group of 3 or 4 there and say, what's something we really need to be working on that you think could cause us trouble? They don't even have to say who said it. They simply have to say, our team came up with this. That way, there is some psychological safety involved in that. Even when it could, in fact, I have done this when a senior vice president or somebody from in that organization, they would call the 12th floor, was in the room, still could do the same thing. And certainly that was something that Doug wanted people to bring that forward. That particular piece of small group, let's bring up what's something that could get us here. Remember, you need to talk about what might blow us up. So many people want to say, oh, you're just being negative. No, we need to know what the limiting factors are. Because if I don't know what they are, I cannot mitigate against them. Limiting factors are all about risk. How do I deal with that? Well, the same thing is true in conversation. What are the limiting factors among my team? And all of us in leadership positions, should be an ongoing mantra. Please, please, I want this to be safe space. I need to know what you're thinking so I can tap into, important phrase, collective wisdom. Do you have another one, Nicole?
Yeah, well, one I just wanted to add, there's actually an activity called Kill the Company.
There is.
Well, there's a whole book about it, but it's a very interesting activity where you actually put people in a position to say, okay, let's pretend you are our biggest competitor. What would it take to destroy this organization? And it's kind of a fun way. It gives people permission to sort of think differently. It gives people permission to sort of call out those things that they might not otherwise call out that are potential hindrances to the organization's success.
I love that. I love the title of that book and the content.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple other great comments. I think Tony has one here. Individuals can lead themselves in this space by doing what you all have taught us. Be a learner, be open, seek to understand and inquire. Don't go to judgment so quickly. Being certain in ourselves. And then Dan had a really great comment as well. It's amazing what happens when a leader lets go of that fear and moves through it. I don't mean to oversimplify the letting go process, but it's liberating to realize everything will be okay and we can move through that. I remember thinking, so what if this job is eliminated? I'll be fine. I'll move on to something else I enjoy. And that felt really good. And it was enabled him to be able to model courage.
So there's tremendous courage in that. And I listen to podcasts as well as do what we're doing. And one of the ones I just got from one of our colleagues talked about a youngster that had cancer and probably at that point in the conversation was looking at an end state, right? And he took out the book Where the Wild Things Are, because that meant something to him as a youngster, as a younger youngster, right? And he said, my job is to keep my eyes open and stare it right in the face. Stare it right in the face. My friends on this call, we have a colleague on here who stared it right in the face. Not going to let this get me. Stare it right in the face. And that ability to come to a sharp edge, and I like this language. This is definitely very Dharmaic and very Buddhist type. So you come to an edge, a very difficult edge in your life, in your journey as a leader, and then you soften that edge so you can see what's around it. Come to a sharp edge and soften. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are over time, and I'm going to do our typical checkout piece right now. And they may be silent for a couple of seconds, so don't let that bother you. But I want you all thinking this too. I will think this in a few moments after we're done. What resonated most? What was the most significant piece of this conversation that you're going to say, I'm taking that with me? That is a potential for me. That's something I can do to help identify the necessary roles, help people work together as a diverse group, make sure the team is driving that transformation forward by looking at practices that will enable and disable and take ownership of the team's behavior. Those are the four big ones in this conversation today. What's one thing, one idea that resonated deeply with you that you intend to include in your practice?
For me,
Go ahead, Nicole.
thanks, Julie. For me, it's the mutual investment in each other's success. And it was a great reminder, not only can we as leaders help people to get to that place, but just a reminder for me as I'm showing up, wherever I show up, am I showing up as being mutually invested in this person's success, in this team's success, in this organization's success? So that was really what resonated with me. And I'm out.
Beautiful, thank you. Julie, you start to go.
Yep, I'll build on that. And that goes sort of what with Colleen, what was talking about was a spouse theory versus theory and practice. And really just taking a step back instead of looking at everybody else and saying, we should be doing this and you should be doing this. Let's take a step back and look at myself. And is it what I want? Am I also acting that way and creating those conditions? And sometimes it actually starts from us. And once we start to change, everyone else will change as well. And I'm out.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Miss Colleen.
Julie, as you were talking, I thought, don't should on yourself or others, right? That is just judgment all over the place. And I think many times leaders, we don't make that connection. So I think that what resonates with me is how boy does is your thinking is is visible by what comes out of your mouth. So how can we ensure that we're taking as leaders the time to reflect and pause? Because to Nicole's point, if I want the most dynamic team, what am I doing to ensure I'm showing up in a space that is developing psychological safety, that lets everyone show up to bring their best self forward, their best self? And I'm out.
Ah, that's great. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can understand why these three people, these three women, are just phenomenal human beings and incredible colleagues. And if you see the behind the scenes work, they never let me bullshit anyone. They are constantly like, "What's that, Ray? What's that? Are you sure that mental model is useful to us?" So I love them for the way they have helped me create a very safe space for people to talk with us. Those of you listening, thank you. I would like to also thank Paul Leemwind, Matt Money, and Blair Shepard for the article in HBR. It's a fabulous article. If you haven't had a chance to see it, feel free. You can grab onto it online if you choose to, or grab the mag, whatever makes sense to you. Trying to save trees, we would go online. And in my world of personal development, there is nothing that matters more than this psychological safety. How do we build a space where people can actually openly say, "Oh, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm feeling. It's what I'm wondering, what I'm learning." Those are spaces that really matter. Those of you that are listening, I'd like to let you know that if you'd like to chat with one of us and have a discovery conversation, they're all on us. 30-minute discovery conversation on us. Contact us through the website. The website is gojlc.com. And good luck in reimagining and reinventing your leadership team. Take care, everyone.